Welcome, Alex. The mic is yours.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and discuss with you some of the things that are happening in the Grand Lodge. First, I think that it's important that we talk about some of the changes that are happening. Certainly, with losing Michelle, that's a big challenge for the Grand Lodge. And I'm a believer that with every challenge, we have an opportunity. And right now, I'm having a hard time seeing the opportunity with losing Michelle, but we will press on, and we are pressing on. The one thing I preach to the craft, though, is to have patience, and I appreciate their patience and understanding as we transition from 20 years of Michelle to whoever our new office manager will be. And we are in the process of hiring a new office manager. I spoke with Most Worshipful Bruce Baker about it again today. And so we're making some progress, and the office committee is working hard to get that done. Really for my year, what I wanted to preach to the craft, and this is what I said at my installation a couple of weeks ago, is maintaining relevancy of Masonry. Is Masonry still relevant? And I think that when we look at our society as a whole, you can mirror the decline in Masonry, or our numbers in Masonry, with the decline of civility and the decline of some of the thoughts and conversations that we used to be able to have and do that civilly. And last week I was at the Conference of Grandmasters in Milwaukee and had the opportunity to visit with the grandmasters from all over the country and grandmasters from all over the world. And one of the things that we're really looking at as an organization, not just here in Nebraska, but is Masonry still relevant? And I would argue today, Masonry is not just relevant today, but it's needed today. Our communities need us, our states need us, and our country certainly needs us. I think if you look at where we're at as a society, again, you can trace the decline in civility with some of the decline that we've seen in Masonry and the activeness in Masonry. And just because we've gotten smaller doesn't mean that the sky is falling or that we're in dire straits. Our Grand Lodge is in really, really healthy shape. I mean, when you look at our finances, we're in healthy shape. Certainly every organization could have some more members, but when you look at our organization, there's not a lot of organizations in the state of Nebraska that can boast being around for 165 years, having 8,500 members, and having a solid financial footing. And we've gotten to this point through the wisdom of people that have come before us, and we'll stay at this point with the wisdom of people that comes after us. And so really for my year, I want to bring stability. Certainly we want to replace the office manager. And again, I said this at annual communication, we're not replacing Michelle, we're hiring an office manager. And I think as soon as we come to terms with that, we're not replacing Michelle, we're hiring an office manager, that things will be a lot smoother. It's hard to replace somebody with Michelle's experience, Michelle's dedication, and Michelle's understanding of not just Grand Lodge and the Blue Lodges, but also the appendant bodies, our foundations, and our various charities that we're involved with. I really am hopeful to get out and visit not just the Blue Lodges, but the appendant bodies. Look forward to being in Omaha here in the not too distant future. We've got a couple of events coming up. I'll be at the Potentates Ball later this month. We've got, I know the Scottish Rite has their spring reunion coming up, and I will certainly be there for that, for the 8th degree. And so it's a good time to be involved in Masonry. It's a great time to be active in Nebraska Masonry. We do have some challenges, but we will overcome those and we will move on from those. I do want to mention the one thing that I'm really hopeful for. One of the partnerships that we at the Grand Lodge have fostered over the last decade or so is the Masonic Veterans partnership. or excuse me, the Masonic Veterans Program, and we partnered with the Disabled American Veterans. We currently have 3 vehicles on the road with them. We have a new vehicle, a new Explorer that was just donated to them in the fall. We are about $7,000 away from adding a 4th to their fleet. And each one of our vehicles that we provide to them has a square and compass. It's donated by Grand Lodge AFNAM of Nebraska. Being a veteran myself, it's near and dear to my heart. And I very much look forward to not only meeting the $7,000, but going above that. And I think that we can do that. I've asked all the masters of the lodges to have their lodge at least contribute $250 to the cause. I'll be asking all the lodges to contribute to that. That's something I believe in, particularly out here in the central and western part of the state. Those vehicles get used a lot. A lot of our veterans are immobile. And so having those vehicles on the road and having them back and forth between Grand Island, Omaha, and everywhere else in the state certainly is appreciated by them. But with that, we've got a great officer corps this year. I have really had a great opportunity to get to know these officers this year, and I've really enjoyed working with them. Almost everybody came back this year, which is an anomaly. On the appointed part of the officers, typically that's a 1-year appointment, but we have such a great officers corps. It was really important for me to bring everybody back, especially coming out of COVID. We are just now finally getting back to pre-COVID, where we're scheduling cornerstones. We have a lodge chartering coming up with Vitruvian Lodge in Lincoln, and I think that's really something to celebrate. This is certainly the first time I've been involved with a lodge chartering, and I think that we're really in solid shape. And I will say this though, coming back from the Conference of Grand Masters, we are not in a unique position. Every Grand Lodge in the nation wishes that they had more members. Every Grand Lodge in the nation wishes they had more money, wishes they had more support among the independent bodies. What we are dealing with is not novel to Nebraska. If we had a silver bullet, we would fix the Masonry across the country. The problems that we are dealing with are not unique to Nebraska, whether it's membership, transition of staff. And again, I want to bring stability to the Grand Lodge. This year is about stability, also change. I am new. I've been doing this for 2 weeks, 3 weeks now. And we've got a new Grand Secretary with Most Worshipful Bruce Baker. He's about 6 months into his job. And Jennifer, our records tech at Grand Lodge, has been here for about 10 months. So we've got some change, we've got some newness. And so I really appreciate all the patience that we've been receiving from some of our lodges who are used to a certain tenor and just really used to a certain level of service. And that's the service that we will strive to get back to. But we're going to have a little hiccup here or there for the next 2 to 3 months, but we'll get back to where we need to be. With that, that's really, that's the first couple minutes. I'm happy to take any questions or happy to discuss anything you'd like to.
Alex, I think what I will do, we have 22 or 17 attendees, and I'm going to work on unmuting them and asking them to unmute. But before we do, because I'm going to pull rank right now, because you brought something that is near and dear to me. So since I can't write it in the Q&A because I'm apparently not allowed, the idea of relevance. And I do believe Masonry is relevant, but I have a feeling that in many lodges, Masonry within the lodge isn't really always relevant to the members. And I think one reason that people are becoming active is they don't find a relevance within the lodge. The other one that is, I think, forgotten is, I think Masonry is not relevant in the community. We tend to be invisible. We tend to let other people decide who we are and whether we're good or bad, because we don't really, I think, show people who we really are. I'm going to now duck away and leave you with that while I start allowing people to to talk.
No, Don, I think you're absolutely correct. One of the challenges that we have, and we don't realize it, we are an organization that's tremendous about celebrating our history, but we're not great about celebrating it with people who aren't Masons. We will talk about our history with amongst our brethren until we're blue in the face. But when it comes to being able to celebrate that history with non-Masons, that's where we tend to falter. We are at a transition where we're moving away from the ask one to be one to actively recruiting, and you still have people that are resistant to recruiting. We have such a tremendous brand. I mean, when you look at the square and compass, you would be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't at least recognize it. You know, it's like the Nike swoosh of organizations. When people see the square and compass, they recognize it. But what we have to do, and I challenged all the masters of the lodges this, and I'm glad that you brought it up. Be relevant in your communities. If you are just holding a business meeting and paying the bills, you're not relevant. You're not relevant to your community, and you're not relevant to your membership. We have to be better about being active in our communities. And one of the masters said, well, we don't have any money to be active. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, we used to have a parade float in the homecoming parade, but we don't have money for a parade float. And I said, so do you have money for a couple of bags of candies and you can walk? You don't need to do you don't need to create a big to-do float for your homecoming parade. Just remind people that you're there. One of the things that I think we struggle with is our own identity and being able to celebrate it. We're really great about celebrating with each other, and we're really great about discussing the ritual with each other. But when it comes to the non-esoteric stuff, we're not very good salesmen, and we're not very good about discussing it with other people. When someone says, oh, my grandfather was a Mason, or my uncle was a Mason, or my cousin is a Mason, we just kind of nod our head and say, well, that's nice. We don't follow it up with, well, why aren't you a Mason? Or what questions do you have? We've gotten to the point now as a society where we don't really know our neighbors. So why would we want to take time to get to know a stranger? If you don't know the people that are living next door to you, why are you going to take the time to discuss something that's deeply personal to you with a stranger? But we have to. I'm not convinced that Nebraska Masonry won't get smaller. But that just because we get smaller doesn't mean that we can't get better. People associate success with our numbers, and we have to get away from that. We have to be the best possible version of ourselves as not just a Grand Lodge, but as Blue Lodges, as appendant bodies. And one of the readily identifiable appendant bodies that we have is the Shriners. A lot of people recognize the Shrine, they recognize their hats, they recognize the scooters, they recognize all that. But most people don't make the connection with Shriners and Masons. And so we have to be better. Our lodges have to be better. We have to plan more events. We have to be better at customer service for our members. And we also have to be better at the public face. Public relations outside of Masonry and customer service for our members will really go a long way to doing the things that we need to do. The challenge is we have a lot of people who are tired. We have a lot of people who have done this for a long time. We have 20-year secretaries that just don't want to carry the torch anymore. And so getting a spark into an individual lodge or putting the pizzazz back in Masonry, that's not just going to be a one-person thing. We have to collectively come together and celebrate Masonry, not just within ourselves, but we have to be able to project that to the public. And I think if we do that, we can really go a long way to becoming relevant again. But we've had a lot of lodges go extinct. We've had a lot of lodges consolidate. And let's be honest, when we consolidate or extinct or have a lodge go extinct, we are done in those communities. Those communities will learn to move on without Masonry. And we have abandoned those communities because there is no Masonic presence there anymore. And so when we have a lodge go extinct or consolidate, we have to be honest with ourselves that we are leaving that community behind. And so it's going to take a lot for us to get back, because the world and our communities will learn to move on without Masonry.
we've got several people who have turned on their cameras, and you're free to, John, James, Eric, you're free to join in.
Derek, if you could give me a softball or two, I'd really appreciate it.
This is, if you hear me, this is John Williams.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Most of us, you talked about being visible in the community. Most of us own enough Masonic pens and we put them all on at once and rip a lapel off. But how many of us wear those outside of lodge or other Masonic organizations? We need to wear those out where we're seen at church, other meetings, at lunch somewhere, where people will see that and say, what does that mean? Get somebody that shows a little bit of interest that way. Somewhere along my pen line, I found one that is two flags. One is American flag, other is a square and compass. I've had more people ask me about that. In fact, one person at church, another guy at church at another lodge managed to get him a petition before I could, but he tried.
Oh, that's a good point. I appreciate your input. Yeah, we, as I mentioned, we've got a very recognizable brand. People, if they don't know what Masonry is, they will still recognize the square and compass. They still recognize the fez. They still recognize the double-headed eagle. I mean, we all have such distinct, in Masonry, we've got such distinct and great logos that we need to be better about wearing those. I mean, I wear a lapel pin on my suit when I go to work every day. The challenge is we got people that aren't wearing suits anymore to work. We've got people that can work from home. And so we are finding different ways to have to get our logo out there. I will say too, one of the things that I really appreciate, the northern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite, southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite, and the Shriners came together and put together a really great marketing campaign where if you're not sure about an elevator speech, or you're not sure how to get somebody into Masonry, or you're not sure, hey, this is somebody new, I don't have an elevator speech for them, you can send them to the website beafreemason.org, and it has it's a really great intro to somebody who has no Masonic affiliation or no Masonic understanding. And I've sent several candidates to that just to give them something flashy to see. It's a well done website. They can enter their own information on there, and depending on their address, it gets sent to the Grand Lodge office. And usually what happens is I will send those to the lodge, and in their area, or I'll send it to, if I send it to Omaha, I'll confer with the Grand Lodge officers and find out where's the closest lodge for this person in Omaha or Lincoln. And we'll send it to that lodge and say, listen, contact them within 2 days. Over 68% of those candidates, those potential candidates, are never contacted nationwide. And that was the Scottish Rite followed up with that. And that was the presentation that we had from the Scottish Rite at the Conference of Grandmasters. They had the number 68% of those candidates are never contacted by a lodge. So we're getting low-hanging fruit, people that want to join, and then we filter down to the Blue Lodge and they're not being communicated. And that's really a lost resource, because not only have we lost them, but we've now given them a bad impression in Masonry too. And that goes along with, though, that we've got to guard the West Gate a little better, which I think that we are doing with our background checks, and also too with some of our mentoring programs. I think that the long form proficiency has brought back some of the mentoring and some of the fellowship that needs to happen. But we have lodges that are bringing in anybody that they can, because they want to keep the lights on, they want to keep the doors open. And if you say, I want to be a Mason, next month we'll have that petition. And there's really been no vetting, and there's been no time spent with that candidate. So we have so many things to be proud of as Masons. When it comes down to it, we're all on the level, and we've got to get to the point where we communicate that to the people who want to join us. we're all proud of our organization, but we have to be better about communicating that and be better about the people that we bring in and guarding that west gate. So we don't have to have the discussions like we had at annual communication about being able to suspend members and that are under criminal charges. It's really frustrating to me that we've had members that this is what we're having to deal with. I mean, we're supposed to be taking good men and making them better, and I think that we still can. Anyway, that's a real, but I appreciate that. I appreciate the input. I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I try and wear something Masonic whenever I can. So I would encourage that. And I would encourage people asking questions too and answering questions. Okay.
Alex,
Sir.
this is Armel.
Oh, yes, sir.
McDonald.
Yes, sir.
You commented about the program with the Northern Masonic jurisdiction, Southern and the Shrine, about the contact program.
Yes, sir.
I had some concerns about that contact program, so I reached out to Michelle, and this is between 18 months and 2 years ago. And Michelle indicated that at least for the area in the Omaha market, that the contacts were sent to John Maxwell. And Ron Stites might have been involved in this. I'm not 100% sure of that. But each one of those people were contacted either by me or by Ron or John. And so the 68%, we might have been in the 32% that did reach out.
Sure.
But I had zero success in getting callbacks after 4 or 5 times, or using emails, and the emails in a few cases weren't even correct, or they weren't recorded properly. So, I know at least in this market that reach out was attempted
Sure.
to get to those folks. But I would be more than willing, if we have more of them, that anywhere in the state that I would reach out to the people and then try to put them together with a Blue Lodge in the appropriate geographical area. So if you want to put that, Armel, and last name's MacDonald, M-A-C.
Oh, yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir. No, I know where to find you.
Okay. So, and I'm serious about that. I would do it anywhere in the state. In fact, I'd probably do it anywhere in the United States. If it's going to help us bring some good people in.
I agree. No, I agree. I don't think the challenge is really in the eastern part of the state. I think the challenge is we'll get somebody in the western part of the state or the central part of the state that might be 40, 50 miles from a lodge, doesn't understand that they're 40 or 50 miles from a lodge, and we've got nobody to contact them. Or if we do, it's somebody, from 40, 50 miles away. Omaha is not the part of the state that keeps me up at night when it comes to Blue Lodges and Masonry. But no, that's great to hear. And I know that they still do go to, I think John Maxwell still receives those. I receive them. It's usually whoever the Grand Master is receives them. I am currently in charge of checking Michelle's email. So I spend about an hour and a half a day going through emails. And so between potential candidates, band scholarships, and paying the bills, I have a couple of emails to sift through.
Most worshipful, one of the presentations I attended at the Conference of Grand Masters involved that campaign, the Northern Jurisdiction, the Scottish Rite. In Wisconsin, they've developed an incredible membership campaign using that, which totally negated the need for the Grand Lodge to develop a program and graphics and all of that kind of thing. And they run their membership program through the website, and they went by using that. You had a short presentation, I think, that you saw. That I went to a breakout session, but the point was that they were getting 3 to 4 members across the entire state of Wisconsin prior to implementing the not just the Man a Mason campaign.
Right.
And they're getting now, since they did this, put it on the web, they're getting 40 a month. And one of the things I think is so a great opportunity for us is to advertise on Google and Facebook. And it's pennies for each contact. It's, you identify who you will communicate that your ad will show up to. And, it's not costly at all. It's very inexpensive. So it was a great way for Wisconsin to reverse the direction of their membership.
Yes, sir. And they also instituted the Love You Brother campaign too, where they come upon a brother, or they leave a meeting with a brother and they say, "Love you, brother." And the first time their deputy grand master said that, I'm going to be honest, it made me a little comfortable. I'm not used to walking in a room and having somebody say, "Love you, brother." And the other thing that they did is they took control of their narrative when it came to Masons, Wisconsin Masons. If somebody were to Google that, they controlled the narrative, because some of the things that were popping up on the top of the Google searches were not, it's not that they were necessarily disfavorable, but they weren't really favorable either. I mean, if you Google Freemasonry, 9 times out of 10, it's not really reputable material that you're going to come across. I mean, we've all seen it. And so Wisconsin's doing some really good things. I had a nice chat with their grandmaster and their deputy grandmaster. And I think that one of the things that we're going to do this year, we've got to come up with a long-term plan. Tom Howder, when he was grandmaster, had a strategic plan. Well, that was 2012. We're 10 years past that. So we, as an advancing line this year, are going to spend some time on strategic planning, coming up with a plan, and looking at some of those things like that, things that we can do to change the narrative, or to be better about controlling our narrative. I mean, again, we've got a great brand. We know that we have a great brand, but somewhere along the line, we are not the best about selling the brand. And so being able to drive that membership and drive people to our website and get people to fill out information, those are people that came to us for whatever reason. And if we can filter out the people that are contacting us from prison, we're going to be a lot better off. You would be amazed at some of the inquiries that we get, and we do filter those. But when you take those aside, we still have a substantial amount of people that come to us unsolicited, that are just looking for something. But I will be the first to argue, if we find somebody who's looking for something, are we really going to help them find it if we just say, "Yep, come join us. We're going to do this charity or that charity"? I mean, we have to be clear about what we're selling people. We are not a service organization. We are an organization that provides services. We are a fraternal organization that just happens to have a charitable arm, that just happens to have that. We have the Chip Foundation, the Shriners have the hospitals, Job's Daughter has Hike. I mean, every appendant body has a charitable organization, but we are not a charitable organization. We are a fraternal organization that happens to have charities. And so I think you're right, like being able to control our narrative and being able to get to that point where we can share that information with folks, it's really going to be critical. And that's not going to be a short-term process. We're going to have to be able to craft that and work together on that. And I think that we've got a really solid foundation in Nebraska between Grand Lodge, Scottish Rite, Shriners, Job's Daughters, the Rainbow Girls. We could really do something impactful to sell our message.
Most worshipful, I thought I'd
Sure.
throw in a few items here. Just took some notes from some things you were talking about, and you actually said something that I thought was really key to the kind of the success of what's going on. Is there's quantitative success and there's also qualitative success. And the quantitative part, yeah, we want more members because that enables us to do more things financially. Obviously, more membership, it's a little bit more sturdy. But there's the qualitative aspect of, bringing better men in, making real Masons instead of just having more members. And that qualitative success lasts longer. And that's the thing, to John Williams's point about, wearing pins or wearing, supporting that thing while you're outside, is to also consider while you're outside of that, if you've got a hat on the thing or even on your car, you are the image of Masonry at that point. Think about the way that you're driving. Think about the way that you're treating other people. people will not forget that thing. And especially now with social media, everybody's obsessed with taking that one instance where you did something wrong and then turning it into a nightmare. So as to marketing and as to that, quantitative and qualitative, yes, we have to have both because they inform one another. But I think the qualitative aspect and what you're kind of promoting here with the making Masonry relevant in terms of being back out in the community is incredibly important, because the success of a lodge is a lot of times going to come from the qualitative success that you had, not necessarily the quantitative success. So just wanted to say that, and you know what? Love you, brother.
Love you, brother. And I appreciate that. No, that's really, we are at such a critical time, not just as Masons, but also in our society. We're emerging from a pandemic. And I think for the most part in Nebraska, if you're if you're west of Omaha and Lincoln, for the most part, your life is fairly undisrupted right now because of the pandemic. And I think for a lot of people, this pandemic has been critically disruptive. Mental health, we are social creatures by nature. And so coming out of this pandemic, we really have an opportunity to trumpet Freemasonry and really to grab onto people. Hey, you fell by the wayside the last couple of years. Guess what? We're going to do some things, bring you back out of your hole, get you back involved in society and move forward. Because I think people are looking for that. If you look at the things that people were missing during the pandemic, we missed people. Think about how you all felt when your lodges were closed and we had to do things virtually and we couldn't have tiled meetings on Zoom. Think about people that didn't have that, and then these people that just are home and can't leave their house, and they're in other jurisdictions and they're still not able to leave their house. I read in New York, it's going to be March 7th, and they're finally going to remove some of the restrictions. And like I said, for me in central Nebraska, our kids are in school without masks. We've been in school for the last 2 years. You don't have to wear a mask to go to a store. Life has not been as disruptive as it has been in other places. But we have to recognize that for some people, this has been disruptive, and give them an opportunity to come back, bring them in. I think if we reached out to some of our suspended members, give them value for their membership, we might be able to get some of those. I saw the list. Last year was the first year, and this gives me hope. Last year was the first time in several years as a Grand Lodge officer that I have seen our suspensions were less than our deaths. Our suspensions are usually more than our deaths. We had, I think, 246 deaths last year, and we had 117 suspensions. And 117, I mean, that's still a lot of members. I mean, my lodge is 150 members. That would almost wipe us out as a lodge. But I'm heartened by the fact that last year, even in a pandemic, we still only lost 117 members due to suspension for non-payment of dues. And I think if we can keep that as a smaller number and give people value for their membership, we're going to be okay. But again, it's bringing, as you said, the qualitative, quantitative. We've got to give people value for their membership. One of the victims of one days, I was a member of a one-day class. I went from 0 to Shriner in one day. In about 12 hours, I went through a lot. And there were probably 6 or 7 other people in my class. We've never seen them again. They got through it. They still pay their dues, which we appreciate, but are we really giving them value for their membership? And I think that the answer is no. And so using some of those qualitative things that we can control moving out of the pandemic now, I think we can do a lot better at providing value for their membership. And also too, I talked to somebody today, and their lodge dues are less than the per capita. So the lodge had enough money where they're supplementing their per capita. So the members are still paying $30 a year as dues. I'm all for making Masonry affordable, but we shouldn't be losing money on members. I mean, we've got, if we're going to be an organization that people are, if we're going to be sought after, and we're going to want to give value to people, we also have to give them something to strive value for. And so, I think gone are the days that we charge members $30 a year. Gone are the members where we just get through the per capita. I mean, the per capita we can't control that. That's set by the Grand Lodge members. So we need to focus on the things that we can control and doing those qualitative things like you discussed, I think are really going to go a long way to bringing people back, especially coming out of the pandemic. See, hand up.
Yeah, James, you have your hand up.
Mr. Ferguson, you got a hand up. Yes, sir.
Yes, most worshipful. Just some comments from my side. One thing, a couple notes. When we talked about, we need to be more out there. I know, at least if anyone knows my parents, if they see a square and compass on a T-shirt, they get an extra large and send it straight my way. I have drawers full of them. And one thing that at least I personally started to think about, and I think it's really helped at least me personally, but also helped a lot of people around me start asking me more questions. We need to get away from the mindset of, yes, square and compass, we need to act like a upright citizen and not be an a-hole when we wear a square and compass. But whenever I see myself happen to wear a T-shirt with our logo on it, I try to do at least one outstanding thing in the public. Not just try to be a nice person, don't try to argue with somebody, but take some time out of your day to do something that someone in the public might think of as a nice thing. Help an old lady with her groceries when she didn't ask. You see stray carts out in the parking lot, take 5 minutes, pick some of them up, help somebody else's day out. People see the square and compass and they automatically think good things instead of, oh, just a normal person. This is my process on that. Another is, I know I get in arguments with a lot of brothers about advertising on the internet, and that's not the Masonic way, and blah, 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 blah. Luckily, I work at a Masonic museum, and I have evidence, back in the early 90s when Freemasonry was a big boom, there were newspaper clippings and lodges advertised in newspapers all over the place. We have on exhibit a Uncle Sam with a square and compass saying, no, Uncle Sam wants you to be a Mason. And another more cheeky one next to it saying that ladies like to date Freemasons because they know how to keep a secret. And things like that. So I think if you run into an argument with someone saying that we shouldn't advertise on the internet because that's not the Masonic thing to do, we have a large history of Freemasons advertising, and it's just different medium on the internet than on newspapers. So that's my 2 cents on it.
I appreciate your comments. No, I think you're exactly right. I think that advertising, we can. The challenge that we have now is that we have really 2 memberships now. We have, and I call them the people that still want the Nebraska Mason in print, and those that want it digitally. And then we have this gap in our membership, and coming together with those members, we have analog members and digital members, and we as a Grand Lodge still have to find ways to communicate with them. And I hear it all the time. We shouldn't have to recruit. People should just want to come and join us. People should just ask to join us. That's the way we've always done it. The way we've always done it gets us in a lot of trouble for a lot of different things, whether it's recruitment, whether it's look at, even when we had Michelle, we just always thought, oh, Michelle will always be here. Michelle will always take care of it. It's been a very stressful 3 weeks for me, not having an office manager and having to work through that. But the mindset was, well, Michelle's always going to be there. We're always going to have to do it. So we'll always rely on that. Just because we've always done it this way doesn't mean that we can't think outside the box and do different things. We as an organization, Freemasonry has existed for 305 years. We're now in our 4th century of Freemasonry. And to be able to do that, Masonry has always had to adjust with the times. Masonry has grown over 305 years. And we have to choose whether we, as a Grand Lodge of Nebraska, want to grow with it, or we get lapped by the rest of the world doing it. Most worshipful Russ mentioned what they're doing in Wisconsin. What Wisconsin's doing is not a novel approach, but they're taking a novel approach to do it because they're the ones that are doing it. They're actually doing it. They're putting it into action. They have an action plan and they're going forward with it. They don't have a silver bullet. but they're taking the ammunition that they have and they're doing the best with it. And as Most Worshipful Russ mentioned, they're getting 40 people a week to go to their website, and they've got, I think there are 24,000 Masons in Wisconsin, I think is what they told me. And they're going through, they're adding more. Now they have a different setup than we do. They have they're still doing the 1 days, and they still have some challenges with that. But I really think that where we're at and with our brand recognition, there's no reason why we can't be having 200, 300, 400 new Masons a year. You know, we've gotten to a point now where I think last year it was 65. The year before that, it was 116. That's not going to sustain us. I mean, when you're losing 117 a year to suspension, you're losing 246 a year to those who pass away. That's almost 400 members, and we're bringing in 100 a year. So we need to be able to replace those that we have just to stay where we're at. And so I agree with you, and thanks for the comment. You know, you're spot on. Micah has his hand up.
You know, you mentioned that Masons are social creatures, which is true. Everything we do is in the lodge, in person. You know, we talk about hand to back and mouth to ear. That's how we communicate. So I've never been a big fan of the idea of a billboard selling Masonry. It works because you are somebody I like and respect, and I want to associate with such people. So it kind of gave me really a shameless plug for the Friendship Social in Omaha, which I think has been a very positive thing that we do with the Scottish Rite, Tangier Shrine, and the Blue Lodges to sell Masonry one-on-one. And I don't know, I think they do that in Lincoln, and I'm not sure if, I know Kearney has done similar events at Rob Morris, but I think that's been an extremely effective way to promote Masonry one-on-one in a laid-back social atmosphere with good food, a few adult beverages, and the message is easily sold. I think it's been very successful. So we're doing one on Friday. I know that Right Worshipful Mike Storr is speaking on behalf of the Grand Lodge, and at least for Masons in Omaha, if you've got a prospective member, bring them by to the Scottish Rite on Friday evening. There's an infomercial in there too.
Thank you. Appreciate that. You're right, though. And I meant to address this when James spoke too. Our membership is our best billboard. We don't need a billboard to sell what we have. Our members are our best billboards. When you go out and you wear a square and compass, you go out and you have a square and compass on your car, or if you're AJ and you have all of your logos on your back, you are selling Masonry. You are, I spent 15 years as a fraternity advisor to undergraduates, and I would have to remind our freshmen and sophomores every year, if somebody sees you and you're wearing your letters and that's their first interaction with you, for the rest of their life, that is going to be their opinion. If you meet a Mason for the first time and they're having a bad day, or they're, you know, they grunt at you, or they swear at you, or they honk and flip you off because you cut them off in traffic, and you see that square and compass for the rest of your life, that's what you're going to think, because that's your initial impression. And we have a really good relationship amongst the appendant bodies here in Nebraska. Not all states enjoy this. And so I'm so appreciative of the Scottish Rite to bring me in. I'm a proud member of the Scottish Rite. I'm a proud Shriner. I'm a proud member of the Sojourners. At some point, I hope to be a proud member of the York Rite. But I'm proud of all of the organizations I belong to. I didn't just join them because I wanted to add another card to my billfold. I joined them because I believe in what we do, all of them. And if we can continue that narrative outside of Masonry, I think we're going to be a lot better. And appreciate that on the friendship dinner. Yes, Right Worshipful Mike Storr will be representing the Grand Lodge there. And I hope that some of you can take the opportunity to get there. Dr. Herbolsheimer with his hand up.
Good evening, sir. So I want to just comment real quickly. The conversation about the qualitative and quantitative, I think, is fantastic. And at least here in the Omaha area, I think we're really starting to reap some of the benefits of that message. You know, we've been focusing a lot on, really investigating guys and bringing in bringing in guys that will really contribute to masonry in the state. And we're seeing more guys travel. We're seeing more, cross lodge relationships. And I think as that continues, I think that the Shrine will benefit, Scottish Rite will benefit, the York Rite will benefit, because they'll be more engaged in general. So I'm glad we're having that conversation. I think it's important to continue to have it, and to really stand behind it and push it, because it takes time, but we're getting there. And it's going to take years. And you're right. I think you said it earlier. We probably will still shrink. That's okay. I agree with you there. And then real quickly, circling back to Michelle and communication, we touched on communication a little bit too. How, if we have lodges out there that aren't quite sure how to get a hold of the Grand Lodge or anybody, or need something done, dispensation granted, stuff like that, what's the best way to get them to voice that? Is that something that we had kind of said maybe the DGCs can kind of head that up and filter that out?
Sure.
Grand Lodge officers just kind of want to see how, what your plan, what your thoughts are on that at this point.
So Michelle's email is still active, so they can still email Michelle. It comes to me. I will route it appropriately. Or the office is still staffed. Jennifer, if you haven't spoken to Jennifer, she's very nice. She's brand new to masonry. She's been with us for about 10 months, and she's still getting, she's still transitioning now that Michelle has left, but she's taken on a larger role. Jennifer is a great resource. If she doesn't have the answer, she'll send you to me. But you can still call the Grand Lodge. It's still staffed. Jennifer is still there. You can ask Jennifer a question. She's very good about passing it on to either the Grand Secretary or myself. And, some of the things that you'll see different. I've already gotten an email about we didn't get the monthly newsletter out. Well, you're going to see some hiccups for that. And I'm going to try and get one done. We're still going to try and get that out this month. But, the well-oiled machine that we've been over the last 20 years, you're going to notice some changes, and there's going to be some delays on that. But Grand Lodge is still staffed. Jennifer is still there. I didn't think I had enough to do, so I'm doing a lot of this. But we're doing that because I don't want the average Mason to see that there's a vacuum or that there's a void. I think that if we can just get us to the new office manager, we're going to be okay, because our Grand Lodge shouldn't be about one person. It shouldn't be about one office manager. It shouldn't be about one person keeping us afloat. We as an organization should be able to rely on ourselves and our organizations to keep us afloat. We should be fine. And like I said earlier, it's hard for me to see the opportunity when we've got some of these challenges in front of us. But I really do think it's an opportunity to have our committees become more active, which reminds me, the all committee meeting is March 12th at 9:00 at the home in Fremont. So those of you that are on a committee or a committee chair, I look forward to seeing you all there. I will send out that reminder tomorrow. So we've got a lot again, though, and I appreciate that, John. We have a lot to celebrate. I think that we are moving in a positive direction. There's a lot of energy about masonry now. I know a lot of you have sensed that too. This year at annual communication just felt different. There's a different energy. I really feel good about where we're heading. But part of that is turning the narrative too, because for so long people have heard doom and gloom. Oh, the sky is falling. The sky is falling. Why would you want to join an organization when they tell you, well, we don't have money for this. We don't do this. We don't do that. It's a great opportunity to turn that narrative around and say, you know what? We may not have a lot of money, but this is what we're doing with the money that we have. We may not have the best lodge building, but this is what we're doing with the lodge building that we have. I went to Long Pine for their ladies at the table and their officer installation in January. Long Pine, Nebraska has about 300 people, and they have 38 members of their lodge. They had a tremendous table lodge. They had the mayor, who's not a member. They opened it up to the public. Bringing the public into some of our celebrations is a good thing. Have a ladies at the table. Have a table lodge where you invite prospective members. We don't do anything esoteric at those events, but for some reason we have the idea that we can't invite the public to some of these events. If it's not a tile lodge, you can bring people to it. We've made it so you can open the lodge in EA and fellowcrafts, so you can keep your EAs and fellowcrafts engaged. That's okay. Open in an EA degree so you can keep that new brother engaged and coming to meetings, but give him value for it. Don't bring him in as an EA and say, well, you can come to our meeting and pay your bills and go home. Stay after, talk to him, have a beer with him afterwards, have a cup of coffee, do what you can to keep them engaged. But those are the opportunities that don't cost us anything that we can do. And it's really good to see a lot of these familiar names out here. I see Gerald Gertis from Franklin Lodge, and I appreciate you being on. Franklin Lodge is another great success story. They had 25 members between Kearney, Franklin, and Holdridge. I think it was in December, do a master's degree, and it was tremendous. You can read about it on the Grand Lodge blog. But to see 25 brothers come together in Franklin and bring this new Master Mason to light in Masonry, that's what Masonry is at its bare essential level. It's brothers celebrating brothers. And if we can be better about that, amongst ourselves, we're going to be better about that amongst the people who are non-Masons. Anybody else? Do we have any other questions? Don, have I run over my time yet, or are we still doing okay?
Well, yes, and it's going to cost you dearly, Alex.
Put it on my tab.